and what is born in you will be holy. Mary was only carrying the child. She had no contribution to the genetic composition of the child. That is why the only person who in the world can say, I and my Father are one. Jesus said, no child in this world can say. They may look 75%, 95% like Father, but they can never say, I and the Father are one. And the cloned child will exactly be a replica of the original Father. We do not know how this process has occurred, but the science has proved. Now no so-called rationalist can ever say, how can a child be born without a sexual union? More than that, how can Jesus claim himself to be God? 100%. When Jesus said, I and the Father are one, he who has seen me has seen the Father, it only tells that it's more possible. At least now we can believe. So many things that have been told in the scriptures, only time has revealed. We are only ignorant, but as time has passed, God is able to reveal us more things. So that is the uniqueness of the birth of Jesus Christ. And when naturally, when the first cloned sheep, they call it dolly. So it was such an admiration to the whole world. There's a dolly, cloned child, first cloned living being. No, it was an admiration for not only for the scientific world, for the whole world. So when the first bud was there in Bethlehem, everybody who looked at it, no, it's different. This is different. This is different. And, people from east came to see. The shepherds came to see. Everybody who came and adored and worshipped, they knew this child was different, something totally different. It may have a resemblance like roses, but then it's in composition, it's totally different. After a few years, only we see the rose. It is partly blossomed only, 12 years. And even at that time, the fragrance was so intense that when Jesus was there in the temple at Jerusalem, everybody was so astonished at the knowledge, at the wisdom of this 12-year-old lad. Partly blossomed roses do not give that much fragrance. But then when it is even partly blossomed, it started spreading its fragrance. The next stage we see in its full blown. Now, at 30 years, it's a full-blown rose. But while it attracted the attention of the whole multitude, the neighborhood, wherever he went, people thronged to hear from him, to touch him, to get blessings from him, to get healed from him. He was the talk of the day. And everywhere the fragrance was spreading on one side. People could not resist. People just came. He went into the mountain, people came. He was near the seashore, people came. He was in a marriage house, people come. He was on the road, people come. Everywhere he was being thronged by the multitudes because the fragrance that was exhibited was so irresistible. Right? But at the same time, there are some people who started examining his life. That right? They wanted to question every aspect of his life. They were critically analyzing him. While the fragrance, if you examine each petal, they examined each petal. They questioned his prayer life. They questioned his compassion. They questioned his healing. They questioned his miracles. They questioned his character. They questioned his connection with God. They even doubted his connection with the devil and his kingdom. Every petal they were examining, but they could not find any faults. If you examine each aspect of Jesus' life, there is no comparison at all. Take for example his teaching. His teachings is admired not only by Christians, but even non-Christians, even secular people, even sometimes atheists and communists praise Jesus for his teachings, the best that has ever been given to humankind. The miracles that Jesus did, there's no parallel to it. He could even raise a person 4 days after his death. Absolutely unparalleled. And the compassion that he had, especially to people in the downtrodden section of the society, his compassion was so genuine that people of that strata continued to come near him and were at ease with him. That is how we can evaluate his compassion. He was a great teacher. He was doing miracles, all that. But at the same time, his compassion was so irresistible that people in the lowest strata of society continued to throng him. There were Sadducees and Pharisees and all sorts of great people looking at Jesus. Why all these people, downcast people, lepers and prostitutes and people who are demon possessed, they just come and be at ease with him? Because of his compassion, because of his kindness, because of his love. His prayer life, he prayed early in the morning, he prayed every time, he prayed on the road, he prayed in a marriage house, he prayed in a dead in a house where there were dead people. Everywhere he could pray. He sort of revolutionized the prayer life, and he taught us how to pray also. His prayer brought so much results that his disciples always wanted to know what is the secret of his prayer. They always asked him not to teach them about how to do miracles, but how to pray. His prayer life, every petal of his life, prayer life, his compassion, his teachings, his miracles, everything that you take is so unique, definitely so unique. And 3.5 years around this Palestine. He didn't move more than 200 miles, but then from nook and corner at the border of this Palestine land, up to that, people heard about him and started coming to him. The Greeks came to see. The Canaanite woman came to see him. So his fragrance was spreading 3.5 years. And 3.5 years, Jesus exposed himself to anybody who criticized him. He said, come on, criticize. Because he knew one thing, that he was not in this world only to give fragrance to Palestine or a small group of people for a short period of time and then disappear. He said he has come so that he will take the sins of the mankind. And you know what process he has to go through to achieve that? He knew that. But before that, he wanted to convince the world. Have you seen anybody like that? Have you heard, after examining what fault you can find? In John's Gospel 8 chapter, he says, can anybody find a fault in my life? Is there anybody who can find a fault in my life? And not only that time, the last 2000 years, people are trying to invent all sorts of cock and bull stories to mark his character, and nothing stands. Jesus stands unique, as in his speech, in his teachings, in his healings, in his miracles, in his communication with God, in his compassion to the people, in his availability to everybody who wants to come near him. And more than all that, the most important thing of his life, if you can summarize in one word, the life of Jesus, he came to suffer. By that I mean, his main purpose was, he's going to end his life in the climax of crucifixion. But before that, he said, I want to pass through the whole spectrum of human tragedy. When people who have problems, who have difficulties in life, they go to pray. The first question, the doubt that comes in anybody's mind is, does this God understand? Does this God understand? So many people come to the doctors and they say, chest pain. If the doctor doesn't bother, they will say, doctor, it looks like an elephant standing on me. Just to impress the doctor. At least then he will get an idea of what pain I have. People have a feeling that unless the doctor has an idea, he may not take it very seriously. So we go to God and then we ask, we are suffering, does the God understand? Does God care?